Hi everyone, welcome to Woolen Spinning. My name is Rachel. It is Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. Thank you so much to everybody who is here and who is in the live stream. I really appreciate that you're here today. Sarah actually started work early just so that she could be here, so that's amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah. It's good to see everybody. I feel like it's been a long time since we talked, but it hasn't actually really. It's only been a couple of weeks, but I feel like there's just been a lot going on. But then I realized yesterday it's because there has been a lot going on. It's just been a really hectic fall. And I think a lot of people have been feeling the same way, just based on what I've heard people say and what I've sort of seen around on social media and just with my own friends and our own community. Here locally to where I live, just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia. I just feel like everybody's kind of on this like hamster wheel, and I certainly don't feel like I've been able to get off that sort of wheel all fall. It's been really, really crazy. It is so good to have you here, Hannah, today. I can't believe that you're here. She just had her baby girl was just she said her baby girl arrived on Sunday morning. Her name is Fiona. Oh, and she's perfect. We are in love, of course. Blessings to you, Hannah. We actually talked about Fiona for Nora. She was going to be Fiona Yvonne, and we were going to call her Fee. I just really liked it. Anyways, many congratulations, Hannah. Obviously, we didn't choose Fiona, but it's a beautiful name. I love that name. So congratulations. Lisa says, welcome to your new little Bubba toes. So James, my son, James, who's 10, his nickname is Bubby. I'm always like, every time I call him that, I'm like, wonder if he's going to stop me one day and be like, don't call me that, Mom. I know it's coming. But so far, I've been able to get away with it. So, yeah, he's Bubby. Bubby to me. Mary says she loves the name Fiona as well. Anyways, chat. I could sit here all day and just stare at chat and talk to you guys through chat. And Kiara is still, she's still got some work to do, but she's watching the show while she does her work. So I hope that this is helping you get your work done quickly, Annie Kiara. I still can't roll my R like she does when she says her name. It's just beautiful, and I can't do the roll, the R, the roll that she does. It's just amazing. I love hearing Anna Kira say her name. So it is so good to see everybody. We could sit here all day and just say welcome. For those who are just new to watching the show and you haven't checked out the live stream before, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I'll try not to wobble the table here. About 40 minutes ago, I started to actually feel like I had a bit of a headache coming on, and I don't get headaches very often. It's really unusual for me, but it seems to be right like frontal, and it's really kind of bearing down. So we will see how we go, and we may save community participation for next time, just because I can feel it kind of coming down like a bit of a cloud. So thank you for understanding, and for just in case I don't kind of have the normal energy that I would normally have. And for those who are returning viewers, thank you so much for watching the show. Thank you for coming back week after week. And if you don't mind taking a moment to hit subscribe, I would really appreciate it. That actually really does help the show get out there and get seen, so that other people who are also interested in knitting with their handspun and using their handspun will have that opportunity to see the show, find a group of like-minded people who are also trying to use their yarns. And I appreciate you guys taking that moment to hit that subscribe button. It really does. It really helps. So I have all of this sitting here. It's all white wool. It's very exciting. As I roll my eyes, I'm not sure how I'm going to get this dyed. I'm sort of trying to figure out if I like sweet talk Katrina, or if I talk to Felicia, or if maybe I suck it up and do it myself. I'm trying to figure it out. Anyhow, this is all the Cormo. So we'll talk about this. And then I've got two sweaters to talk about. One is here in the background, which you haven't seen for a while. And then the other one is actually on my chair behind me, because I only have one dress form. So 2 finished sweaters and an almost finished spin. This is all that is left. Spoiler alert of the Cormo. This is it. And I tried to get it done. I tried, but I couldn't do it. So thank you, Suzanne, for saying that. I really appreciate that. She said, take care of yourself and we will be here in a couple weeks if you need to end early. Thank you. I appreciate that. You guys are amazing. You guys, I will say, there are so many different communities out there. We all are part of multiple communities. We all have lots of things going on. We're multifaceted. Our making is kind of one part of who we are, but we all have multiple things. And I have to say, our community has to take the cake. We win. I'm giving us 1,000 points. For really being there for one another and really acknowledging the humanness of each of us and not just saying, well, gotta crack on. You guys are really incredible about really kind of, letting your own needs and wants be set aside for those of the greater good. I think you guys really have to give yourselves some pat on the back, some toot puff puffs for that, because not all communities work that way. And there are lots of communities that we are a part of in person, virtually, and otherwise, because some communities are a little bit more blended, where, I think we really do a really good job of looking after one another and saying, you know what, my needs can wait for a moment because somebody else needs X, Y, Z. And I really want to give you guys some pats on the back for that. It's really amazing. So with that, let's get into the show, and we will talk about this Cormo spin to start with, and then we'll go from there. So I'll see you on the other side. So this is kind of funny, the transitions on the through the credits, they actually are perfectly timed, that because there's a delay, right? You guys are watching the live stream with a little bit of a delay. I'm about 10 seconds ahead of you, and every time my screen swaps, the live stream would swap, but it was one screen behind, and I was watching it and I was like, that is it's perfect. It's a perfect thing. It's kind of one of those funny things. So I also had another funny story to tell you about this past week. This is one of the spindles that I've been working on with this Cormo. So this Cormo spin has been, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. We've talked about it a lot on the podcast, so I won't go on and on about it, but I've been switching back and forth between suspended spindles and support spindles, depending on what I can spin on. So I was working on this one, which is actually too heavy for this fiber. And this is I was going to say this is Hound Design, but I actually don't think that it is. I think that this is one of a local maker here. Well, Hound Design is local as well, but I think it's Eric Stapleton, which my friend Diana had him make a whole bunch of spindles a few years ago. And he's my friend Kelsey, who's just an amazing, just incredibly talented weaver. It's her dad. And he happens to be a woodworker and a wood turner and whatnot. And he made these just beautiful spindles, kind of modeled after Dave Smith of Hound Design, after his spindles. Anyhow, this particular one is a little bit too heavy for this fiber. And a friend was asking me about it as I was using it. And, I was rolling it down my thigh quite fast. And it's about 35 grams, so it's quite heavy. And I kept dropping it because it's just, the fiber's too fine to spin it as finely as I was spinning it for this spindle. So the more fiber that piled up on the shaft, the more the spindle was dropping and the yarn was breaking. And I said, oh yeah, you know, this is a suspended spindle. They're also called drop spindles, and you know, it's for making yarn, and you know, I'm going to make, you know, a whole bunch more of these singles, and I'll apply them together, and that's what makes yarn, and blah, blah, blah. She's super interested, but it kept dropping because it was too heavy. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry, like I'm distracting you. It's probably breaking because of that. And I said, no, it's just, it's a heavy spindle. And she said, oh, I guess that's why they call them drop spindles, because I guess you're just always dropping them. And I was like, no. I just felt like, oh, it was just so obvious. Like it was just constantly dropping like every couple of seconds. And I just thought, oh man, like, you know, this just makes me look like a real noob. Like I don't know what I'm doing. And I just thought, oh, you know, I wasn't insulted or upset about it or anything. I kind of had a bit of a laugh, and I was like, no, it's just too heavy. And I put it away. And so I only spun this little bit, and I worked on this over the weekend, last weekend, so a week and a half ago. And then like I said, I put it away because I just felt like, oh my goodness gracious. No, that's not why they're called drop spindles. These are all of the singles that I have already put onto storage spindles. So I think you guys might remember I did all of that sampling to decide whether or not I was going to do a 2-ply or a 3-ply from this fiber. So this is all 100% Cormo. It's from, I think that Sarah Elizabeth of Sarah Elizabeth Fiber Works, I think that she got it from Montana. I had the fleece in my stash, and I really kind of realized like I really need to get going on this. And by then the lanolin and stuff had sort of started to go off a little bit. It really needed a really good scour. Liz of Kingdom Fleece and Fiber did that for me, and so she washed it for me and then made pin drafted roving for me. So this is the last of the pin drafted roving. The original fiber, the original like bag of fiber that I bought was a full pound. And so whatever is here is kind of whatever came out of the washing. And I don't know why I didn't even think to weigh it when it came back to me, like as the pin drafted roving. I don't know why I didn't think, like, because there's going to be washing loss. So we'll see how much. So I've been calling it a pound of Cormo ever since, but it's probably not really a pound. It's probably more like 65% of the pound. So I've just been like very slowly working away at this. So there's these 5 bobbins here that have all the stored singles, and this is the last of the Cormo. So this is a Nitty Naughty UK support spindle, and my goal with this project was just to come out of it feeling really, really comfortable with my support spindles. That in the end, when I was working with my support spindles and working with these different fibers, that I would feel comfortable, that I would feel like I could spin whatever I wanted to spin with my support spindles, that I would kind of know what to do. And that was sort of my goal. So since I wound off all of these, and I know they're kind of just out of the picture shot there, but since I wound off all of these, I haven't wound off anything else. So this is my basket of spindles ready to put onto these, ready to pull these singles off, basically. So this is Woodland Handcrafts, one of his owl spindles, and this is actually kind of a sad story. So this spindle here was full of all of these singles, and I had them all ready to go, and I was going to pull them all off and wind them off, and this cop, this entire thing actually slid off. So I'm not sure how getting these singles wound is. I don't know if I'm going to lose a whole bunch of them or if I'll only lose some of them. I'll be able to wind off this stuff on the outside, but beyond that, I'm not sure. So there's that spindle there. And then I've got my 2 Allen Berry spindles. And as you can see, this one didn't end up with too much on it, but the other one did. These are my coordinating spindles that he made for me. This one first, and then this one second with my little mouse. And then I have, what else do I have here? Silly Salmon. I have my Mirkwood Pock, which is probably my, if I had a gun to my head and I had to tell you what spindle was my favorite spindle, probably I would pick this one. Probably. And then what else do I have here? I have Bosworth, 2 Bosworth spindles, suspended spindles that are full, and actually that one's stuck, so I won't pull it out. But that one's one of my Bosworth spindles. It's a little bit heavier than my other one. I think this one's 23 grams, and that other one that's stuck in the basket is 18 grams, I think, if my memory serves. And then these 2 are yarn spindles. He's a maker in Maine, in the USA. And then this one is Volchuk Arts, which is a Russian maker, which is currently, you can't source anything from her. And then this one is my Hound Design Lace Spindle. And actually, I really like this one. The hook on the top is actually, if you can see that, it's actually crooked. And Mike just needs to bang it back straight. And he said he would do that, but it does wobble because of that. And then lastly, if I can get it out, I just don't want to damage it. This is my smaller Bosworth. And everything's tangled. So I am not expecting, there are 2 things that I'm not expecting from this spin. That's my 18 gram Bosworth, my little one. I love this spindle. It's very, very fast. So a couple of things that I am not expecting from this spin. When I go to ply all of this, all of these singles that were spun over many, many, many months, on many, many different spindles with, lots of different factors, humidity, dry weather, because in the spring when I was working on this, it was rain. We had so much rain and such a terrible spring. And then in the summer, we got into like really, really dry weather. So different humidity levels, different moisture, all that kind of stuff. And then different spindles, some suspended, some support. I am under no illusion that this yarn is going to come out particularly even. I think it's going to have a lot of texture. I think it's going to be very thick and thin. I think it's going to be very similar to yarn that I made when I was first learning to spin. There's not going to be any consistency about it. But it's, as you can see, based on these storage bobbins, I am going to get huge yardage, huge. Probably at least a few thousand yards. So that said, I have a decision to make. I can either do a 3-ply, which was from these little samples that I did a while ago. I did do a 4-ply sample, but that for sure is out because I want yardage. Probably what I'm going to do, I'm going to answer my own question before I pose it, but probably what I'm going to do is do some more samples that are bigger, that are more substantial, and weave up some little zoom loom samples. And if you guys don't know what a zoom loom is, they're made by Shacked. They're basically just a pin loom. There's all sorts of different pin looms out on the market, but this is kind of like what I'll put it under here. What am I doing? This is kind of like what a sample off of the zoom loom would look like. It just gives you this little swatch of fabric to give you some information about what your yarn may or may not look like as cloth. Not final cloth, not the final set, not the final sort of product, but what are some of the things that you're gonna, sort of look for in good cloth. You're gonna be looking for a good set. You're gonna be looking for, if you want drape or no drape, do you want a dense cloth, whatever you're looking for, it starts to give you some ideas. So that said, what I need to decide is if I do a couple of slightly larger samples. This is the 3-ply, and you can see if the camera catches up with me. See if it'll, hello. Oh, my ring usually works. Maybe not. Not today. Not today, pig, not today. You can see that it is round, but there is some thicker spots, some thinner spots, but it's still incredibly fine. It's still a very, very fine yarn. And the 2-ply is even finer and even more uneven. So this is the 2-ply down below, and like this yarn is so white. It is like stark white. So it kind of screams at you a little bit, and the camera doesn't really like it very much because it is so light. And it does have some, it's elastic for sure. There is definitely some elasticity there. If I show you the 3-ply, it has a little bit less, but they're both really beautiful yarns, and they're both sort of gently thick and thin and gently textured. You know, if I were to sell this yarn in a shop, or if I was purchasing this yarn, I would expect the seller to say, you know, textured yarn with neps, you know, gently thick and thin. Like that would be a very descriptive way of describing this yarn. So, because of that, there's sort of two things, and I would love to hear what you guys think. Either I can do something very, very fine and do the 2-ply warp, 2-ply weft, and maybe do like a resist dye in the warp. I could chain up the warp and then chain it really, really, really tight and do a resist dye type idea, and then do a white weft. And really super fine. It could maybe be a stole, you know, really, really closely set. So like this 2-ply is about, I think it's like 28 wraps per inch finished, the 2-ply. Let me just check. Yeah, it's about 30 wraps per inch. So if I started with, you know, a twill set of 20 ends per inch, and I could make something like that, you know, something sort of like that. And then if I was going to do the 3-ply, be looking at something more like a blanket, maybe, you know, a twill again, maybe set, you know, it would be a little bit thicker, set more like it maybe 16 ends per inch. And yeah, so that's why I need some more information. I need more information. Part of my concern is that a 2-ply, to ply a 2-ply, like it'll take me years. It won't really, but it'll feel that way. It'll take years to ply it. I'll have to do it on the Ashford e-spinner, because otherwise I'll be there forever and a day. I'll just be plying and plying and plying and plying. So chat is racing past me at top speed. So let me just say, oh, Carol, such a great saying. She was just saying this day, so this harkens back to what I was talking about before the credits, about just how warm and kind this community is. I was just saying this today and wanted to share it with you. Always be curious, always dare to dream and to try new things, but more than anything, remember that you are always enough. Absolutely, you're gonna make me cry, Carol. It's been kind of an emotional few days. I almost started crying this morning. One of my good friends, her daughter's really struggling with kindergarten. She's really struggling being away from mom all day. And so Nora came out of the classroom to tell her that she would look for her at recess, and, you know, that she, you know, was excited to see her at school and so on. And I almost like burst out crying. I was just like, this is so lovely. We have such lovely little people around us. All that Cormo is so beautiful. Thank you, Elizabeth. Amanda, this Cormo is so white. It's almost insulting. It is so white. It's just unbelievable. So I'll finish off this last little bit of fiber. I desperately tried to finish it for today just so that I could say it was finished, but not quite. So almost. Christine was saying maybe as the cup gets bigger, we forget to compensate for the drop spindle spinning more slowly, which is why the fiber breaks. Yeah, probably, Christine. It's not that much fiber on there. I think the reality is for the fineness of the fiber and how fine I'm spinning, it was a mismatch in spindle. It was difficult to achieve consistency when using all different spindles. I haven't figured that one out yet. With spindles. I haven't figured that out yet with spindles. Yeah, Suzanne, that's something that Diana Twist and I talk about all the time, because of course she's such a spindle aficionado, like just in general. And she's always trying things. I mean, talk about getting curious. I mean, she's always doing all sorts of amazing things. And, you know, she's done a sweater now, a couple of sweaters in her spindle-spun yarns, you know, using a mishmash of support spindles and suspended. And like, you know, really, once it's fabric, you can't tell. So I think we get really caught up in the, you know, consistency conversation. And I think sometimes we need to just like, let it go, you know, and just accept that like it's going to be, you know, this is going to be a huge amount of yarn. Is this Cormo fleece? Mary's got a couple of questions here. These look great. If this is this the Cormo fleece that was still a little sticky after washing? So I didn't rewash it, Mary. Liz did, of Kingdom Fleece and Fiber. So actually I don't know what she did. I'm pretty sure she scoured it with Power Scour. Yeah, so Christine was saying if the cops get unruly or if they fall off, slide them onto a drinking straw or a thin DPN, then wind them off. So, and do it carefully when you get close to the core. So this actually fell off. It actually slid off of the spindle in the bag and was in there for a while before I realized that it had slid, like that they had come apart. So, and I was out because of course Murphy's Law. So I put it back, sort of slid it back on as best as I could. And then, yeah, you're right, Christine, I'm going to have to do it very, very slowly as I get closer and closer to the core. Yeah. So, Lisa says one of my ghastly dogs just plopped down to sleep on my knitting. Oh my goodness. That's how needles get broken. What would you use or need more, a blanket or a stole? Good question, Amanda. You know, I think this is one of those situations where I don't need either. And so I'm going to approach it as something, not so much what do I need, but what would provide the most learning. So I'm leaning towards the stole because I could also use that as my M's and O's stole and not do twill, but do M's and O's instead for my GCW. So I am leaning toward the stole more and more, for sure. Oh, Lisa, that's very kind. She says Nora is a superhero. So let's talk about, I feel like chat is just going to keep on going. So I am going to keep on going because otherwise I will sit here all day and talk to you guys about whatever's happening in chat. So let me turn, I usually go the other way. So I was just on autopilot here. So let me turn this way and show you guys a couple of things that has been going on in the background. I'm not sure if you guys will remember this sweater, but it sat on my dress form for a very long time. And it sat on my dress form kind of unfinished. And then it sat on my dress form kind of finished. It looked finished. I talked about it on the podcast as if it was finished. However, after I washed it, laid it out to dry, I didn't really block it per se, but just washed it. And I put it on for the first time back in the spring. This was finished January of this year. So I finished it 10 months ago, basically. I put it on and I realized right away that the sleeves didn't feel quite right. One of them felt perfect and the other one felt like it was a bit short. So I was like, oh, that's fine. I'll just wear them like bracelet sleeves and I'll kind of wear them like, you know, just sort of up on my wrist a little bit like this. Because like this sweater, there's a reason why I wore this sweater today. Because this is sort of a waffle texture, it kind of gives you, it sort of pulls up on itself and it sort of crunches in on itself like this. So if one sleeve is slightly different from the other one, you can actually kind of get away with it. And this one does the same thing when you're wearing it. And for anybody who's asking, this sweater is by Amy Christophers. No, I am not going to try to say the name because I never say it properly. So I will link it instead. So it's there in the chat. So, and this is the only project that I've ever made where I actually used the yarn called for in the pattern. At gauge, I didn't make any changes. I knitted exactly the way Amy knit it and released the pattern. I just copied every single step. So, oh shoot. I just copied every single step. Can you guys hear that? I don't know if you can. There we go. So this pattern is, let me just pull up my notes here because I don't want to get it wrong. This is Ystävä by Jonah Haitala. I hope that I'm saying that correctly. I will link my Ravelry project page in the live chat as well. And I knit this out of Estelle Yarn's Natural Llama Worsted, which is it's actually a llama merino blend. And at the time in the community, when I first cast this on, we were talking about the camelids. So we were looking at, sorry, I'm shaking the table again. We were talking about llama, alpaca, camel. We were spinning all different things. We were doing our year of luxury. We were looking at all these amazing fibers. And I had this yarn sitting in my stash, and I was sort of casting around looking for something to cast on, and came across this sweater. And then I, did quite a few modifications. Like I modified the collar, and made it longer, all that kind of stuff. Put the buttons where I wanted them because I had made it longer, so I had to, adjust the buttons a little bit. Anyhow, so it was sort of finished, and I kind of threw it on a pile thinking, well, I'll fix the sleeves one day. This is my one day is the phrase that I use when I want to get out of a tight fix and I don't want to say no. So if we're in the grocery store and the kids like pick up like, I don't know, a box of Coke. Okay, we never buy pop ever. We'll buy sparkling water, like, the flavored natural waters like bubbly and all those kind of things. We'll buy those. Once in a blue moon we'll buy Zevia, but we don't buy like cases of pop. And we don't have it in the house, and the kids know that. So like we'll be walking down the aisle in the grocery store and the kids will be like, oh, can we get a box of Coke? And so I don't say no and I don't say yes. I say one day. It's like my get out of jail free card. And so I threw this on the floor in our bedroom in a pile of other things that need to get finished, including my after party pullover. I still haven't woven in the ends and I still haven't finished the underarms. And I just thought to myself, one day, I'll get to it one day. So of course I never did. And it sat there and it sat there and it sat there for the remaining 10 months. And then one day I pulled it out because I had put on the buttons. So one day I pulled it out and I was going through stuff, and I realized, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was a catch of the light or the angle. I have no idea, but I noticed that one of the button band cast off stitches hadn't been cast off. I had dropped it and it was sitting dropped in the button band. So I grabbed a row marker, one of the locking stitch markers, and I threw it in and I put it on top of the pile, and I said, this one day needs to come sooner and I need to fix this sooner rather than later. And so I decided, when we went away for Canadian Thanksgiving, I decided to take one project that had to get finished, that I wasn't allowed to come home without it done. And if you run into this kind of stuff and you've got, something that you really need to finish, or you want to get it finished, you want to get it off the needles or off the spindles, the Cormo spin is a perfect example for me. Give yourself a deadline. This has to be done by X, and this is how I'm going to do it. Because I think one of the things is it's one thing to say, oh yeah, I need to get that done. But if you aren't in desperate need of wearing a new sweater or a new cardigan or a new stole or a blanket in like the next 48 to 72 hours, the chances are it's going to get thrown off to the side or put away, and you're just never going to get to it. And really in the grand scheme of things, would it have really mattered if I didn't get this fixed and get it finished? Truthfully, the answer is no, and that's actually really sad. So I decided to take it with me. I didn't take after party. I was going to take both of them and fix both of them while I was gone. So weave in and finish after party, get all the ends done, and then also do this. But I thought, nope, I'm just going to take one. And so I got this one done. So the button band is all fixed. I found the leftover skein of yarn, the partially wound center pull ball. I took that with us. I finished off the sleeve, and you know what? It was a bit of a bitter pill to kind of have to swallow. After I finished, so I did it on Friday afternoon. It was beautiful. I sat at the picnic table. It was kind of a bitter pill to swallow. It took me less than an hour. It took me about 40 minutes. Like, it was even close to an hour. It was sure, it was on the north side of 30 minutes, but like it was 40 minutes. Like, seriously, to unravel re-knit and to knit to lengthen. So I unraveled the ribbing, re-knit the missing section, which was actually quite substantial. I had missed about 7 of these waffle sections, so I had to knit 7 of them, redo the ribbing, and fix the button band. It took me about 40 minutes. So I should have done it. I should have done it. All right, I'm gonna undress her. You guys can catch up on chat while poor Diana strips down, and we're gonna switch over to Embers. So let's talk about the Embers cardigan pullover. So, and actually I am gonna move my chair a little bit for this so that you can see a little bit better. I wish there was a smoother way that I could do costume changes on her in one show, but unfortunately, I only have one of her. And I'm supposed to be decluttering. Did I tell you guys that? I'm supposed to be decluttering. I'm supposed to be getting rid of things because we're redoing the flooring in the entire house. And I have to get rid of everything. You know, that all of, you know, just stuff that's like laying around that's extra and stuff that needs to be addressed. And I'm not exactly doing a great job of it. Let's be honest. I try so hard. All right, so this is Embers. Meet Embers. It's kind of funny to see 2 of me next to each other, hey? I could be her. So this is Embers by Tin Can Knits, and I love everything about this sweater. And when we were camping, I actually put it on and all of a sudden had this like awful thought of, oh my goodness, this is not gonna fit. And then I thought, you know what, Rach? If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit, and it's fine. And I just tried to be really philosophical about it, and I just kind of had like a moment of zen about it and just thought, it'll be okay. It's gonna be okay. And I had it on in the trailer. So I finished this in basically one weekend. I knit it over the Canadian Thanksgiving. And yes, you need a dress form. I'm the great enabler when it comes to dress forms. I actually literally have the brand called Diana. So that's actually why I call her Diana, is because she actually is called the Diana doll. So this yarn, this is all I have left from the original yarn cake. So this yarn came from lovely, beautiful Brittany of Crux Fibers up in Whitehorse, Yukon, and she is Fibers, F-I-B-R-E-S. It's spelt the English way, and this is what the cake originally looked like. So I was dragging this thing around when I first cast this thing on, and this is what is left. So I have just the very center of it, and it's kind of bloomed as it's become unwound. So I'm not exactly sure how many grams this is, but these each are 200 grams, and I have about this left. So probably 180 grams maybe of fiber. And this stuff is really interesting because it's unspun. So this is the stuff that goes into the mill to be spun into yarn. And the camera is not going to like me very much. It's going to keep going back and forth in focus. So I'll try to keep my hand here so that you guys can really see this, but you can see how it's completely unspun. And we had a whole conversation about this on the show a couple of episodes ago when I first got this fiber. I think it was not last show, but maybe 151, I want to say. And this wool came from the East Coast. So it's not 100% Canadian. There is probably some stuff from the East Coast in the States in here as well. Sort of from like a generalized wool pool. And Brittany has this stuff. I don't think it's in her online shop yet, but I'm sure if you contact her personally. So I got to here. I divided for the sleeves and the yoke. I redid the yoke 4 times. And I just could not get the increases quite right. And so I got to here, it was the 4th time I had ripped back, and I'll tell you about what that was like in just a minute. I'd ripped back 3 times, knitted a 4th time, and I knit about 1 inch of the body because I wanted to have a pretty substantial body started so that I could try it on and see what it would look like. So we're in the trailer. I'm in my bra. I have it on. I had it on storage cables, and I put it on, And I'm standing there in front of the mirror. We've only got like a very small mirror in the bathroom that's above the sink. And you can't really see because it's a little bit too high for me. And so I'm like on my tippy toes, and Mike just glances up, didn't really look, but just glanced up, and he's like, "Is that for you?" And the way he said it, I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "It doesn't fit." I was like, oh, sweet mother of pearl, because the whole yoke was sitting up like this. It was like sitting up on me like this, literally floating in negative space. And I just thought to myself, I have to just hope and pray that it will block out. I have to just send one up to the knitting gods and say it will block out. It will be fine. It will block out. Water is an amazing thing. This is unspun wool. There is no structure to it. It will do what I tell it to do when I wash and block it, and it will be fine. And I had to just go like this for the rest of the time. And I think that's actually part of the reason why it knit up so quickly, was because I was dreading getting to the end, dreading doing the sleeves, and just dreading the whole thing, because what if it didn't block out? That I can't rip this all back. It's unspun wool. There is no way after washing and blocking that you would be able to rip this back. There's no way. So I was like, well, sock monkeys for the win. So as you can see, it all blocked out. It fits absolutely beautifully. And the finished texture of the fabric, I don't know if I can bring Diana closer to you, but the finished texture of the fabric, like while you can see the individual knit stitches for sure, the fabric is incredibly cohesive. I didn't wash it in really, really super hot water, but I did leave it in the warm water until it was cooled to below room temperature. Like I left it overnight so that those scales would open up, grab onto each other, and just gently close back down. So I didn't intentionally, like I didn't felt it or anything like that. I just left it in the warm water, but I let those scales close completely. And it's created just a beautiful fabric, like beautiful fabric. I wish you guys could feel this. It's not toothy and scratchy and coarse. I think for some people this would be hard to wear next to their skin for sure. But with a t-shirt on underneath or a tank top or something, I think for me it'll be totally fine. And you can see how the sleeves have just come out absolutely beautifully, even and just really, really lovely finished fabric. Now this yoke up here took some finagling. Thank you so much. Carol says it's absolutely beautiful. Charlotte says, wow, quite the emotional roller coaster knit. You can see how nice it worked up in the gray stockinette. Yes, agreed, Lisa. I think it's just really a beautiful use of this fiber and this yarn. I don't think, even after this experience, I don't think that this would be a great fiber, because it's not yarn. It's fiber. I don't think it would be a great use for like cables and that kind of stuff, where if you make a mistake and you're ripping and the stitches are all twisted, things start to fall apart. Because for the yoke, let's talk about the yoke. I added short rows to the top of the yoke versus the bottom. I really prefer the short rows up closer to my neck than I do down here, which is where Tin Can Knits writes them in their pattern. I prefer them up here, and then you can just get into the pattern. And so there's an increase row here. There's another increase row here. And there's a final increase row down here. And I think that this increase row, I probably could have even like increased a little bit more through here instead. But either way, it ended up working out quite well, because you want most of your increases to be done by the top of the shoulder. And I think that would have given it a little bit more of a relaxed fit, even more so that it's not super, super, super relaxed. But it fits me perfectly, but it's not like got like 7 or 8 inches of positive ease. It's only a few. And I think that if I had done a few more increases, like maybe increased here, it would have brought the yoke, just give me that little bit of extra space. So if I were to do this again, that's what I would do. But this was really hard to get that those increases right, because my gauge was so different from the pattern. So the pattern was, I can't remember what the gauge for the pattern was. I feel like it was 24 stitches per inch. My stitch gauge was 20 stitches per inch. So that's why I had so many problems with it. And then as I built it out, I had to keep reworking, like, you know, do I increase every 1 stitch, every 2 stitches, every 3 stitches? And of course you want to be increasing less. And you want it to be increasing evenly as you get lower and lower in the yoke, because it becomes more and more obvious. So just finding that balance was definitely a little bit of a challenge. And then the other thing is, as you can see, I don't know if you can see it better from the front maybe, but as you can see, the embers shift as you increase. So this started here and then they shifted over, and then they stayed pretty consistent here, but then they shifted again. So it kind of creates like some broken lines. And at first I really didn't like that, because you're so hyper focused on your little piece of knitting. But now from a distance, like, you can't even tell. You guys probably wouldn't have even noticed if I hadn't have told you, or if you hadn't have knit this already. One more thing that I was going to say was about the massum. So the massum is gray massum that I actually, Mike gave it to me actually. It was fiber that I got from Edgewood Garden Studios, and I spun this as singles back in 2017. And the reason why I mention this is because this fiber I spun at the same time as I also did a whole bunch of other singles at the same time. And we did this whole deep dive. You guys might recognize this photo actually. We did a whole deep dive into spinning singles around that time. It was like late 2017, early 2018. So if you search the YouTube channel, I'll try to remember to link it later. There is a teaching vlog that was part of the monthly content at that time for patrons, all around spinning singles. So this was part of that, and we talked about like how to spin singles consistently, and we talked about managing your fiber and how to hold it and all that kind of stuff. I think it was this photo that was used as the thumbnail, if my memory serves. So if you guys, singles comes up every so often, and we talk about singles quite a lot, and we go into depth, a deep dive about them, and then we kind of move on to other things, and we come back. But this yarn being as gently spun as it was, I folded in the washing and finishing process. It was perfect, just perfect with the unspun wool from Brittany. Yes, agreed, Christine. She says definitely increases at the top of the yoke if you did a lot of swimming when school-aged. Yeah, I've talked about that before, because of course I was a competitive swimmer, and like my shoulders, my traps and everything, they're, you know, overdeveloped. Although I've lost a lot of that bulk now. Like, I've lost a lot of that. Like, my traps used to be like significantly bigger, and you know, I used to look like I had no neck. And it's funny because I saw a photo of myself a little while ago, and I was like, oh, I've got a neck now. I've lost a lot of that muscle, for better or for worse. Yeah, if it didn't block out, would Nora get a new sweater? Probably eventually. It's too big for her now. But you know, that's what I would have done. I would have just put it away. Yeah. There was a couple other questions. I'm just going back to make sure that I grab everything, that I catch everything. What is the weight asked for in the Ember sweater? I think that it's worsted. I feel like it's worsted weight. No, DK weight. I'm pretty sure it's DK weight. Yes, Sarah, I know what you mean. So this sweater, the inspiration for Embers came from Diana Twiss as well. She did hers in hand spun a few years ago, and I loved it. And it's been percolating in the back of my mind ever since. And I know, right? It's so simple and such a beautiful pattern. It's not mosaic knitting, it is color work, for those who are wondering. And you've got some purl ridges to do as well, which makes it really does look like little fire. It really does. It looks like embers. So, all right. I think that's everything for that. So there's the link, Sarah. I just threw it into the live chat for you to look at the pattern. And you know, as always, I can't say enough good things about Tin Can Knits. They are just fantastic. They're fantastic human beings. They're always at Knit City every year because of course Alexa is local, and they are just amazing people, and their patterns are phenomenal. So they say in the pattern that the yarn weight is fingering, but I think based on the gauge, it's more like sport weight, because it says yarn fingering or sock weight yarn, but I feel like the gauge is a little bit closer to that of sport. It says 24 stitches and 32 inches, 32 rows, sorry. 24 stitches and 32 rows is 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And so I would say that's probably a little bit more sport weight. DK would be like 22 stitches per inch. This did up at 20 stitches per 10 inches, sorry, 10 centimeters. So this is closer to what I would consider a worsted weight, or see, but that said, like even as I was knitting it and you're pulling on it, it drafts slightly. And of course that little bit of twist is being added as you work it. And I knit this on, oh, that was the other thing. I knit this on 4mm needles through the yoke, and then 3.75 for the stockinette. So I gave myself a slightly bigger gauge through the yoke for the color work. And then because I was no longer doing the color work, I went down to a 3.75mm needle to keep this consistent between the two. It works it works really well if you don't do color work a lot, to change your needles around a little bit like that. So maybe that helps. Yeah, thank you so much, Amanda. She says the colors of the singles look great in that pullover. Big fan of how this one worked out. Thank you, Amanda. Sarah, absolutely. They have amazing patterns and give so much extra information. I think that's one thing. Knitting patterns are expensive. We've talked about that on the podcast, why that is, many times. And I think when you find a designer that you get a good fit with, and they do go do that little bit extra every time, I think, you know, you when you want to knit something by them, you don't think twice about it. You just support them by purchasing their patterns. And I think Tin Can Knits is definitely one of those designers for me, for sure. Absolutely. Now, the last thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'm just going to shift the spindles around here because it'd probably be easier for you guys to see it if I put it on the product camera. So this little ditty here, the cute little bookmarky scarfy thing. So I don't know if you guys have caught up recently with Welford Weaves, but episode 9 was about these Huck lace samples that I was working on. And if I had really been on my game, I would have thrown in a photo for you guys to see those Huck lace samples. But this is the back side. I shouldn't be showing you it's his rude side. I should be showing you his good side. I had this sort of relatively long warp, and I've really tried over the last probably over the last year, to really take a page out of the recommendations that the Ontario Hand Weavers and Spinners Home Study Program for the Master Weaver. They talk about this in all of their modules. Jane Stafford talks about it in her online guild. My friend Barbara Mitchell of spinweaverbarbara.com. They all talk about, like, just always throw on a bit more warp, throw on a slightly longer warp so that you have room to play at the end, and you can kind of, you know, finagle. You've been working on that warp for a while, you know it really well. Do something with it at the end after you pull off your project. So I had been a part of a lace workshop, which I talked about at the beginning of September. I talked about it in episode 9 of Welford Weaves, like I mentioned. And so I had this warp left over, and so I split the warp in half, and I talk about this and I show photos of it in that episode of Welford Weaves, so definitely go check that out. But I took the warp that was, I think it was roughly 96 ends, and I kind of cut it in half, kind of, and I did a whole bunch of Huck lace samples, so that I had all the different treadling, all the different ways of treadling Huck, you know, lace, weft spots, warp spots, What else did I do? I made some shapes. I did some tables. I did some grids. I did a whole bunch of stuff. That's all in that episode. And then after that, I pulled those off, and I still had the other half of the warp that I had thrown off to the side. So I took that warp, I figured out how many ends I had left, and I don't actually remember off the top of my head. 4, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 times 4. 15 times 4, 0, 2, 60. So basically 64. Yeah, I had 60 ends. So this is 60 ends because the hem stitching is 4 ends. Anyhow, before we left for Canadian Thanksgiving, I jumped on Fiberworks, and out of the 60 ends that I had left, so I'll just slow down for a minute so that everybody keeps up with me. I don't want to talk too fast and just leave people behind, because you don't need to be a weaver to understand this, and it's not it's not over the head of the average maker out there, in the sense, even if you're not a weaver. So what I did was I took that other half of the warp that I had thrown off to the side, I pulled it, retensioned it, and rewound it onto the table loom. It was on my Louette Jane, and which I have used a surprising amount. For a loom that I said I was going to keep for workshops, I've used it a lot. So I retensioned the warp and wound it back on. Pulled it. I had already pulled it all out of the heddles and the reed. So I'd already left all that off to the side. So if we were working on a rigid heddle, we would have just pulled all the yarn out of the heddle. But on a floor loom or on a table loom, you've got heddles and then you've got the reed. So you've got 2 separate pieces. So I had already pulled it all out of that. And then from there, I went on to Fiberworks, which is a digital program. It's a download to sort of come up with some sort of an overshot program, like some sort of an overshot pattern. Something really super simple, something that I could just see how the yarn acted on the warp. Nothing complicated. I wanted really small motifs, something really tiny that you'd be able to see over 60 stitches, or sorry, over 60 threads. And we've talked about overshot in Welford Weaves as well. I think it was episode 7 and episode 8, I think. So this is where you've got, you're basically weaving plain weave. You're weaving one pick, you've got your warp end of the one yarn, and then you're weaving one pick of that yarn and building up that fabric. So if we were to cut away all of this wool, all of this massum, we would be left with a 50-50, so a balanced, perfect, plain weave, just 8/2 cotton at 18 ends per inch. So if we were to cut away all that wool, we would just end up with a regular tea towel, basically. And so what I did was I was doing some sampling for the Radnor Breed and Color study, which is coming up. All of that sampling and all of that stuff that's going on to the loom is coming up in November. And I had this last little bit left of the warp. And of course my Ember sweater was well beyond the yoke at this point, because I finished the sleeves on the drive home on the Monday. And I decided to wind a little bobbin of one full repeat of the colorway. So this is one full, like from the brown all the way back to the plummy brown again, all the way through. And honestly, by the time I got up here, it was getting really hard to weave. Like, it was like I was at the end of the warp. Like, it was like having to like take the shuttle, pretend this is a shuttle, not a phone. And I was like trying to get it through because nothing was lifting and lowering anymore. Bye, Lisa. Thank you so much for being here. And I just went through the little pattern, all the little motifs that I had done. So yeah, this is just, you know, really just overshot. A, B, C, D, you know, A, B, C, C, D, like it's all just overshotty. I'll be showing you sort of what this draft looks like in November. It'll be on the blog. On the vlog for spinning pearls, and you'll see this sort of pattern worked up in a whole bunch of different ways. But isn't that fun? Let's see if the camera will focus. and you guys can see, but isn't the Massim incredible? These wool singles, this is washed fabric, and it's hard to hold it. Isn't that beautiful? And the floats, like, they look really long, but they're actually only, they're just shy of 1/4 of an inch. They're not very long at all. And and look at this area in here, all these halftones. So the halftones are where you see the plain weave ground and the pattern. I'll try and make sure I hold it where the camera is focused. Isn't that beautiful? It's just, I just thought, man, like, this colorway is just really, really pretty. And how different does it look woven versus knit? Same yarn, just different. Same, but different. So I just wanted to show you guys that. Yes, exactly, Christine. I've ended up with a beautiful, lovely bookmark. How fun is that? So I wanted to show that to you guys because it finished off, to be honest with you, it did 2 things. First of all, it finished off the Embers sweater really beautifully for me, where it was like, you know, what else can you do with this yarn? I have almost an entire ball of yarn left. Like, I used barely any of the yarn. So I have this whole thing of yarn left. So, you know, I just thought, well, I'll throw it onto the loom and just sort of see what it looks like. But it just really made me realize, like, we can do so much with our yarns, and we worry about, you know, using them up, and, you know, we've got all this yarn stashed, and what are we going to do with it, and so on and so forth. And, you know, I just thought, man, like, let's just keep reinventing. Like, you know, let's use up a little bit of it in the yoke of a sweater, and let's use up a little bit of it to weave a sample. Now I wish I had like 2 or 3 times the amount of warp that I had for this little bookmark. I could have like woven off, this took like 10 minutes. I could have woven off half a dozen and had a whole bunch of little gifts for friends for Christmas. You know, like, how fun would that have been to give those to friends, right? And yes, I know that I could still do that, but no, I'm not going to. Time is a precious thing. But yeah, you know, throw on an extra bit of warp and then play. So that's the thing about those Zoom Loom samples. Like, even if you're not a weaver, you can make up little Zoom Loom samples. You can use your yarn, see how they weave up, see what they look like, dip your toe in without actually jumping into a whole new thing with a new language and a new set of yarns and a whole learning curve associated with it. You know, if you get a pin loom, you could do a set of 4 of those little sample and treat them as samples, treat them as a learning thing for yourself. But now you've got 4 coasters to give a friend when you go for tea, and you've used up a bunch of yarn. How cool is that? So thank you, you guys. Dana and Charlotte both say that they really like the little sample. Charlotte says, from now on, when I'm frustrated, I'm going to say I'm at the end of my warp. Exactly. And then just rework it, pull it out, reinvent it, get on Fiberworks. That is a great question, Sarah. She says, do you use Tempo Weave or anything to help with these complex patterns? Is that even allowed for the OHS certificate? So yes, you're allowed to use drafting software. And as you get into designing more and more of your own stuff, it's expected. For Unit 1, you have to do it all by hand. So what I did for my Unit 1 was I actually did a whole bunch of experimentation in Fiberworks. I printed it all off, took it to the loom, and tested it out, because just because it works on the computer does not mean it works in real life, which this is a really good example of that, because some of my other samples, you can see where this kind of overshot motif that I was playing with, it didn't actually work that well. And I talk about that in the teaching vlog for November. And some of that content will be released as Welford Weaves episodes as well. So that's upcoming. But then as you go on further into the program, it's expected that you're using some of that software, because many people are progressing from shaft looms and hand weaving looms like what we're weaving on, and are progressing to looms that are harness looms, where you've got, 32 shafts, 18 harness, whatever the vernacular is. you're working on big AVL looms, that kind of stuff, and it's expected that you're using drafting software. So yes, you're allowed. Yes, it's expected. Many of us, if like I'm kind of dabbling right now and going back and forth between the OHS and the GCW. The GCW is the Guild of Canadian Weavers certificate. And yes, thank you, Amanda, Computer Dobby Looms. I'm kind of going back and forth and working on some assignments like from both and solving problems from both certificates right now, mostly in the name of learning and curiosity, to be honest, because I think they both have a huge amount of value. A lot of the drafting and a lot of the things that I'm doing to build that portfolio and build that work is I do it in Fiberworks and then I take it to the loom and test it out. So this is a perfect example of that work. The other thing is that some of this little motif thing here I looked in Marguerite Porter Davidson's book, and if you guys don't know about that book, just quick Google search. It's full of patterns. It's not an information book, it's a pattern book. And I looked in there and I just kind of couldn't get my head around a small motif that would work quickly, because I was throwing this together before we left for camping on the Wednesday. This was earlier this month, and I was taking my Jane loom with me to do these samples while we were away. I was weaving at the picnic table. You guys would be so proud of me. And what I ended up doing was I actually took a piece of the motif from Jane Stafford's School of Weaving overshot scarf homework assignment project. So that's in, Amanda, can you help me out here? Is that season 6? Was that season 6? Can't even remember. Yes, season 6, episode 4. And I took just like a piece of it, but then I adjusted it and moved things around so that I could have a little bit more happening over a shorter number of blocks. And that kind of didn't work. So I talk about that more next month. Thank you so much, Amanda. Season 6 of Jane Stafford's online school. So if you guys don't know about the School of Weaving and you don't know about Jane Stafford, here is the link. She is a brilliant, lovely, kind person. I would highly recommend that you check her out as well. So we are going to stop there because we're already well over an hour and I actually have to go get the kids. So I can't do community participation today because we always run out of time. But I will save it for next week, and you know what I'll do? I'll even add some extra for next week. So it'll be an even richer community participation. I love community participation because I love being able to talk about you guys and share your work. I think it's really fun. So until next time, happy spinning, happy weaving. We have a couple of weeks until our next live stream. The next one is supposed to be in 2 weeks from today, November 1st. It's Halloween the day before. So Sally Stitches might want to come and say hello. And so we might do the live stream on Monday instead on Halloween proper. So I will keep you guys posted. And I will make sure that there is a Patreon post for that a couple of days ahead of time so that you can see. And I'll put a big asterisk and a big like Halloween. So we'll see. I haven't done Sally Stitches for a while, so it'll be kind of fun. All right, until next time, happy spinning, you guys. Have a wonderful couple of weeks, and I will see you here in just under 2 weeks. So thank you so much for listening to me wax poetic about all of the stuff that I'm working on. I hope that you found some value in it, and please come check us out on patreon.com/woolandspinning. I'll see you guys over there. Bye.